All right, so today we're really diving into some serious stuff, allegations against Sean P. Diddy Combs. You guys specifically asked for a breakdown, going beyond just, the headlines, and we aim to deliver. We're talking about a recent indictment, and we've got some expert legal help to unpack it all, thanks to the Law and Crime Network. And just a reminder, especially with how serious these charges are, our goal is to be factual and impartial, just laying out the facts, no sides taken, so you can make your own conclusions. So first things first, what exactly are these charges against Combs? Well, three main ones. Starting with, and this is the big one, racketeering conspiracy, better known as RICO. Now, we hear RICO, we think, huge criminal organizations, but it's not always that simple, is it?
You're right. RICO's reach goes beyond just those massive crime families, Prosecutors can use it even for smaller groups, as long as they can show a pattern of criminal activity, all driven by a common goal. In Combs' case, the indictment alleges that goal was, fulfilling his sexual desires.
So it's about proving a pattern, not just isolated incidents. Which brings us to the other two charges: sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transporting people across state lines for basically prostitution. Those are some heavy accusations. Could you break those down a bit more? What do they actually mean, legally speaking?
Sure. So sex trafficking, in simple terms, it's exploiting someone for commercial sex. The key here is that force, fraud, or coercion part. The prosecution has to prove someone was either forced, tricked, or pressured into these sexual acts for someone else's profit. Then you've got the transportation charge that's about moving someone across state lines, specifically so they can engage in prostitution. It doesn't matter if they're doing it willingly or being forced, that crossing state lines makes it a federal crime.
Okay, so we're starting to see a picture of something potentially systemic, not just random events. And this is where the indictment gets even more specific, talking about these freak-offs. How do those alleged events fit into the prosecution's case?
Yeah, that term freak-offs, it pops up a lot in the indictment, so it's clearly a big part of their argument.
We understand the details are pretty graphic, so we won't go too deep there. But basically, these were allegedly these wild parties where, at least according to the prosecution, Combs used his power, his influence, to pressure women into participating, sometimes even making it seem like it was part of a romantic relationship. And it gets wilder. The indictment mentions potential male sex workers, drug use, even claims that people needed IV fluids afterwards because things got so intense. But as shocking as all that might sound, it's important to remember this is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, right? What else is the prosecution focusing on?
Absolutely. Those freak-offs definitely grab your attention. But it seems like the prosecution is building a case around a larger pattern of behavior. And that's where the RICO charges come in. They're saying this wasn't just a few parties. This was a whole system designed to get Combs what he wanted.
And to prove that system, they're pointing to the alleged involvement of Combs' own employees. The indictment claims his staff assistants, security, even higher-ups were all involved in making these freak-offs happen. But we have to emphasize, at this point, these are still allegations. Combs says he's innocent, and his lawyers are ready to fight this. So to build their case, what kind of evidence does the prosecution have beyond just these accusations? What did they actually find in those raids on Combs' properties?
This is where it gets really interesting. Well, they uncovered a lot. Like, we're talking firearms, some even illegally modified ammo, drugs, and a whole bunch of electronics, stuff that could have videos, messages, all that.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to go through. Sounds like they're going for an airtight case here.
You got it. See, that's what federal prosecutors do, especially with someone as high profile as Combs. They want to eliminate any room for doubt, make it rock solid.
So no chances taken, they're aiming for that conviction?
Exactly.
But what about Combs' side? How do you fight back against accusations this serious?
Well, he's pleaded not guilty, right? And his lawyers are saying he'll cooperate fully with the investigation. They're trying to paint the picture of a guy being unfairly targeted.
So they're coming out swinging, I'd imagine, challenging everything, every piece of evidence, witness statement, looking for holes in the prosecution's story.
That's their job, right? Build the strongest defense. And this is where it gets really juicy for us, because it's not just legal stuff. This whole case has people talking, speculating, especially about who else might get pulled in.
Yeah, you're right. Hard to ignore all the reactions, even from some big names. There have been hints that Combs isn't the only one who should be worried. Like, we've seen stuff from Stephen A. Smith, Charlamagne Traite. God, even Foxy Brown and 50 Cent chiming in. Makes you wonder if there's more to it, if other people were involved. But how seriously can we take these comments? If you just knew Combs went to a party, does that make you a criminal too?
Ah, good point. Got to remember, public opinion, that's different from actual evidence.
Yeah.
Just being in the same room, even knowing the guy, doesn't mean you're guilty. For the prosecution to go after anyone else, they need to show they were actively involved, actually helped these crimes happen, not just, oh, I saw so-and-so there.
No guilt by association allowed in court.
Nope.
This whole thing is fascinating, and not just the legal back and forth. It makes you think about power, accountability, what real consent even means. What are your thoughts on that side of it?
It's true. This goes way beyond the courtroom. Forces us to look at how power dynamics can get twisted, how people in those positions can abuse it. We're seeing more and more people willing to call that out, hold anyone accountable, no matter who they are.
And this case feels like it's part of that shift we're seeing.
It is. It's a big flashing sign saying consent matters everywhere. And we got to be aware of those power imbalances, how easily things can get exploited.
Makes you think, for sure. Not always pleasant thoughts, but necessary. So, looking ahead, what should people be paying attention to? What are the key things that could change how this whole thing plays out?
Well, the investigation's still rolling, so more could come out. New evidence, maybe even more people getting charged, or even just more details to back up what they've already said.
And of course, how Combs' team fights back. Sounds like they're not backing down.
It's definitely not.
Yeah.
This could get very interesting.
Because the outcome here, it's not just about Combs. It could impact so many people, and even how we think about power and being held responsible for your actions. It's a harsh reminder that what you do has consequences. Nobody's above the law, famous or not. We'll be watching closely to see how this all unfolds. You know, one thing that really struck me going through all this, if these allegations are true, it's obviously very disturbing, but it raises a bigger question. What allowed this to happen in the first place? What are your thoughts on that?
You're hitting on something important. We can focus on what Combs allegedly did, but we also need to look at the whole context. Were there systems that failed? People looking the other way when they should have spoken up? These are questions we need to be asking.
It's like we're peeling back layers of an onion here, right? Going beyond the accusations themselves, trying to figure out if there's a bigger picture.
Exactly. Trying to understand the whole situation, asking the tough questions about how this could even happen, how we stop it from happening again.
Because yeah, holding people accountable matters, but so does fixing the system if it's broken, if it allowed this kind of behavior to go unchecked.
Absolutely. It's a multi-layered problem, needs a multi-layered solution.
This deep dive has been eye-opening, no doubt, but it also leaves you wondering, what's next? As this case moves forward, what should we be watching for?
Well, one thing's for sure, the court of public opinion, that's a powerful force. We've seen the reactions and how that all plays out, how it might even influence the legal stuff. That's going to be interesting.
Feels like we're in a time where public opinion can really sway things, especially these high-profile cases.
100%. Social media, 24/7 news, everyone's got an opinion, and you know both sides are paying attention.
And on top of that, there's still the investigation itself. Who knows what else might come out? What new evidence could change everything?
Right. We're not at the end of the story yet. What we know now, it might just be the beginning.
A lot to think about, for sure. Anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as they follow this?
I'd say the most important thing is to be thoughtful, be critical. Don't just go with the headlines or what people are saying online.
Look at the facts, listen to different sides, try to understand how the whole legal system even works. It's complicated.
It is. And at the end of the day, everyone deserves a fair trial, Combs included. Let's let the evidence decide.
You said it. This whole thing reminds us these aren't just stories, they're people's lives. Finding justice, it takes time, it takes careful thought, and we gotta do it right. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, folks. We'll keep following the story and keep you updated.